asta. S-a și plâns, bifat, vino încoace.
First draw an entire series about my journey with depression before I would be able to talk about it. I think that's an example of gaining courage and more acceptance. And I feel like the moment I start drawing, it does multiple things to me. Like, in a sense, it's a little bit like meditation. It's just like at that point, it doesn't matter anything around me. Hello, and welcome to Artful Minds. And if you're new here, well, so am I. My name is Anka, I'm a visual artist and technical art director, and today we are here together with Calina, my mental trainer for 4 years. We are going to discuss topics like curiosity, belonging, and fear and hope, all through the prism of fine art. So, let's get started. Hi Calina, it's nice to have you today at Artful Minds.
Thank you for having me.
So, you've been my mental trainer for 4 years now, and we actually meet now face to face for probably the third time in my life, okay. And I was thinking basically why we are filming this today, just to give a little bit of context. We've been having some discussions about art and mental health and how I've been healing through my own journey with depression that I truly believe would be interesting for other people to hear. Therefore, all of this was fucked up, strange, and awkward.
That was absolutely amazing. I loved it to pieces. I was already all lost in it, so carry right along.
Therefore, I would actually start with one of the topics that have been like really, really important in my personal development over the past half a year, let's say so, which is the body-mind connection. One thing that you've been telling me particularly often has been experience your pain and try to stay with it. Can you tell me more about this? Why is this your approach?
Okay. Yeah, that's a very important topic for me. And it kind of starts a bit back. But I just want to pause a bit on the fact that you said I've been your mental trainer for how long?
4 years now.
4 years now, okay. And I just kind of remembered the first interaction that we've had and how we've landed this term and how, well, I basically normally call myself a coach to most people.
True that, yeah.
Some people, although I call myself a coach, sometimes call me their therapist. Use that, and then I'm always kind of mindful to differentiate between the two professions. But I remember that you were into sports a lot, and this reference of doing mental training, of having sessions where you practice something that you can then take in your daily life, that just seemed to kind of like really resonate with you. And yeah, it's just kind of like brought me back. Nobody else calls me their mental trainer, so I don't know that that's what I am, but call me whatever.
I mean, you helped me train my mind, so I feel like,
yeah.
And as you say, like it's more of a daily process, especially now since we introduced meditations and whatnot in my own journey of healing. I feel like, it's a daily training in a sense, therefore.
Yeah, even more so lately, that is true. And that's, I think, what works. The actual practice between the sessions is, I think, what adds value as opposed to the whatever happens in a session. Like, that's also important too, but what you take outside of it is what makes a difference. So that's why the analogy works. It does, but it just kind of like, it gave me this flashback of our first conversation. Okay, so the mind-body connection. It's a personal experience that I've had with this. Obviously, it's not a new thing. A lot has been said, and it works for a bunch of people. But for me, I think it started maybe 8 years ago, maybe about 7-8 years ago. Back then, I saw myself as a walking or a floating speech bubble. So I had no awareness of my body. I had done various sports throughout, but without actual awareness, and I would just realize I have a physical body when I would look into the mirror and put makeup and clothes, and I was like, yeah, I'm pretty. And then the moment the mirror is not there, I'm not aware of my body and how I look, and I just think I'm like the thoughts coming out of my head. So there was a time in my life where I had started to do a bit more introspection and reflect a bit more and read more about personal development. And I realized that it's very easy for me to get out of my body, to just fantasize, lose track of time, not be in the present, imagine things that aren't there. That's just very easy for me. I started looking for types of meditation because I started to read about it, and I thought, okay, this might help me. And there were 2 types of meditation. One was like visualization meditation, where, you close your eyes, lie down, and then somebody tells you to imagine things, and you imagine things, and the world of things is happening, and there's a bright light, and there's a meadow, and there's waves, and then whatever. And then there was another kind of meditation, which was more another style, this is how I perceived them, which was more about being with your breath, being with your body, noticing what you feel, noticing what you think, and just like grounding yourself in whatever is actually happening in your body. And the first one was so easy for me. It was amazing. I loved it. I had done it since I was a child. I had always done that. That was like a regular Sunday. That was like a regular Romanian class. Like in grade school, that was like half a day. I would be doing that. Whereas the other one was a little bit more intriguing and very different, and it was what I felt I needed most. And it was just like surprising, like it was stuff that were already there. I didn't need to imagine things that weren't there. And with the visualization kind of technique, so you visualize and you go to your happy place and things happen and there's a bright light and it's beautiful, and then you open your eyes and you go into a meeting and your colleague says something to you and there's no more bright light anymore. So it's like you're back where you started. So it didn't feel like there was an easy progress or that it was connecting. Because what I could have done is, imagine a shower of white light as you're telling me things I hate, but then I disconnect from you.
Yeah.
So it was easy, but it didn't work for me. I already mastered the art of not being present, I think.
Yeah.
So I gravitated to the second, and I met a person around that time who had been to a Vipassana retreat. And Vipassana is like, she just told me a few words about it. She said, it's 10 days. It was horrible. I thought I was going crazy. You're not allowed to speak to anyone. You meditate 8 hours a day. It's just an awful thing. I do not recommend it. And I was like, I still have to go. Like 3 minutes in, I was like bought in. This is a thing I have to do. So I researched. I was living in Spain at the time. I went to this retreat. 10 days. You don't speak with anyone. You're lodged into the same kind of like room with multiple women, so I could hear some giggle at night, but I just like took it very seriously. You don't have your phone. I had a backup phone. I'm like, I don't know if this is a cult. You get one phone, I'm gonna keep a backup phone just in case. I don't know you people. Hello, little guy, how are you? He's like my mindfulness teacher, to be honest. He knows what's up. Come on, find your place. There you go. So, and exactly as I suspected, for me it was bliss at the time. It had the fact that I didn't have to make small talk with anyone. That was absolutely amazing. And then, 8 hours a day you meditate. I meditated. I fell asleep several times. I slept 6 hours. I meditated 10 minutes here and there, probably. Like, it's very hard, meditation, especially if you haven't done it before. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
But... and you feel like you're failing all the time, and then you start to hear your mind and so on. But the way that Vipassana meditation works is that, at least when you get an intro to it, so for the first 3 days you just focus on your breath. And that's an actual thing that exists. It's not a bright light. It's not something you imagine. Your mind keeps creating stories, but you're invited to gently always bring your awareness back to your breath. And then after 3 days of that, of course, the stories of the mind become a lot more obvious, and there's something to that. You're like, I am crazy. I knew it. Like, there's not less thinking. There is more thinking when you start to meditate. There is more of a chatter. You become more aware of it because you're not following any thoughts. So then all of the voices in your head are kind of going crazy, like a room full of kindergartners when the teacher is out. Like, that's what's happening. And then you're like, yep, this was there all along. I knew it.
We were actually discussing about this recently, how in my own meditation process, I'm getting so many memories, long forgotten. It's like I have moments when I'm like, is this even my memory, or maybe did I just dream it? Like, what is this?
Did I make it up?
Yeah, and like it takes me a while to like reconnect with it, to be like, fuck, this really happened. And some of them come from quite dark places, so I'm like, thank God I forgot about this thing. And then it puts me in a position in which I'm like, okay, now that it's here, I guess I need to look at it and accept it and stay a little bit with that feeling. Which is basically one of the reasons why I wanted to discuss with you about this body-mind connection. Because for me, it's been particularly difficult over the years to accept events from my past. And as you have kind of taught me throughout the process, if you do not accept them, there's nothing to heal. And I've been, like you were feeling maybe unconnected with your own body, I literally made a line in between me and my past. Like, I don't talk about past, my past doesn't exist, there's nothing to see there, this is who I am now, and that's all that matters. And as much as I love being a present person and I love being, like, you know, living in the moment, yeah, that put me in a position in which I couldn't heal anymore. And for you, I feel like this was really, like, I feel like you felt it from the beginning, because I remember one of the ways in which I started talking with you was, hi, I'd like to first do more of a coaching session with you and mainly discuss about my career steps from here, as I was also finishing with my diploma in architecture at the time. And I remember that I was literally telling you, there are some dark stories from my past, there are some unsolved problems, we don't speak about that. Like, I just drew this line.
You know, did you saw Encanto, right? Not Encanto. Encanto, was it? With the Casa Madrigal,
yes.
The animation.
Yes,
we don't talk about Bruno.
Yes, exactly. We don't talk about Bruno. It was precisely like that. Yeah. And I'm also feeling like, because this is where it connects with art, right? For me, it was so difficult to accept, to verbalize some of my own thoughts or feelings or, again, events per se, but I found it so much easier to draw it down. And like, even some of the images that we have here today are from a series that I actually called How I See Life as a Tapioca Bubble. Because I thought that I could start with this little tapioca bubble and make it learn and absorb from this world from around. But this actually was supposed to show my entire process with dealing with depression. And I remember how I was like finishing drawing this series, and afterwards I called you being like, Calina, I think I'm ready. I think this is the time to discuss and go there. Yeah.
And it's interesting what you're saying. And I remember our conversation at that time, and of course I was going to always be respectful of that, because you get to decide what you want to explore and where you want to go and where you don't want to go. But at the same time, to me, being present means also accepting things that might be emerging from your past. Like, that's what's being in the present. It's not that you're going back. You're right here. You're being in your body. You're being present. You're feeling things. And stuff you've been, piling under a rug that's now very difficult to walk over kind of want to be set free. And that means being in the present.
I mean, it's true, because it's kind of like part of who you are, all that stuff under the rug.
Yeah.
And that's precisely what I found so difficult to accept. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm present as who I am today, but I would literally kill and diminish.
And that is normal, because you don't want your trauma to define you. And nobody wants that, and they should not have to have their trauma define them. And I think there's already quite enough mental stigma and trauma stigma and all of that we all have to deal with. On the other hand, trauma heals when it's seen. Sometimes when you look, it's something interesting that happened. It's very scary, it's very scary. It's something you don't want to see. It's there. You can sense it. It's like in the back of your mind. It's like in your blind spot, but you can sense its presence, and it feels large, it feels big, it feels overpowering, and you're like, I will never look at this will never I'm not going there. But if for whatever crazy reason you're a bit of a masochist, like the two of us are and some of my other clients, because I think you have to be a little bit, then you're like, I'm gonna look just to see what happens. And when you do look, there's often intense emotions, but then there's also like a sigh of relief, and there's a feeling like this wasn't as big, like this wasn't as bad as I remembered. This wasn't as, I mean, it wasn't nice. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna wear it, like, but not that bad. And the reason why this happens often is because such trauma usually forms at a very young age when you are really small. So when you kind of relate to it in your mind, you see whatever that is, that event, as something really big, and because you were really small, like coming back into your your grandparents' house, maybe after you were you had a growth spurt, and suddenly the tables are lower, and you're like, what the hell's going on? And you actually kind of just grew up a bit, and that's why.
Yeah, and I guess it gets also, so basically, at least for me, it was scary before the process and scary throughout the process. Scary before the process, yeah, is connected with what I was saying before about accepting and even wanting to look at it. But one of the reasons why I even started mental training was not depression per se, because like depression is this super huge, undefined blob of darkness that you don't really like understand that you're inside of it, or like where you are around it, or like why is this, to the point that you really believe that this is how human beings should be, or this is how life is to all of us. But what really...
Or you think it's just the thing that makes you really deep.
Yeah, really deep and really special and smart.
There's this, I heard this in a movie, and we do fall in love, like with our depression, with our trauma, with whatever. Like there's a way we fall in love with our problems as humans. And there is this one thing in the movie where somebody said, there are two girls talking, and one says, I like this painting, and the other one says, but it's sad. And the first one says, what's wrong with sad? It's like happy for deep people.
Yeah, but like what really, really scared me was the personalization syndrome. So basically, this is something that appears for like people who have experienced depression or feeling like they don't belong in a certain place for multiple years in a row. And as you were describing your own journey with the body-mind connection, the moment I got to feel the consequences of that depersonalization syndrome, I was like, I'm either really going crazy right now, like I don't remember consuming drugs, but I don't feel like I'm part of my body anymore. It's like I'm somewhere on the ceiling looking at me from above, and it's like I'm not connecting with my life, I'm not connecting with who I am, with the people that I have around right now. And of course it meant a lot of changes throughout my life so that I can be in a position where I'm happier, right? But that's what sparked into me, okay, like I really feel like now I need help. And that's when I came to you, started also for a short period of time, luckily, but I was also taking antidepressants for like 9 months. And I remember this is also one thing that I told you in the beginning. Like, I'm taking this decision. I don't know if you, like, I also get this feeling like, I feel like so often people get a little bit scared. Maybe it's just the Romanian mentality. I actually don't know how it is in other countries maybe. But like, I do have the feeling that people would get a bit scared when you're telling them that you're going through a depressive moment. Though actually maybe it balances in between being scared or being like, oh, come on, just get the fuck out of it.
Pull through, just smile, you're fine.
Yeah, look,
you're so pretty when you smile.
The sun is shining.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it felt to me even difficult to express like, hi Calina, I'm going through this depression, I'm now on antidepressants, do you even want to work with me? Like I remember this was kind of my approach towards you.
So let me tell you about the first time we met from my perspective, because I've kind of heard your perspective. And it's just like you telling me about it, it was kind of triggering all sorts of memories, and I remembered where I was at the time and what was going on. So I'll back up just a bit. I had done coaching one-to-one in the organizations that I've been a part of, like more professionally, with the people that were part of my teams. And I had been, for a brief period of time, I had been a public speaking coach for TEDx Bucharest. So it was a fun experience. And I went to this course here in Romania organized by Steps for Change. And they have a fairly extensive course, so it's like almost a 1-year thing that includes a bunch of tools, a bunch of practice. You get your own coach, you get mentors, you get practice, you get supervision. So you already, throughout the program, as you learn, you also already get your clients and start practicing. What's also special about this experience and why I chose it is because all 3 trainers that we had were also therapists. So they taught us, first of all, they gave us far more extensive techniques than in most other coaching courses to deal with even complex and difficult emotions or to deal with trauma. Obviously not to do therapy with people, because I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach. But what we've learned to do is to handle or to be able to give the right support to a client that has a difficult moment that is maybe trauma-based. And if you don't learn how to do that, you may really panic. Like if somebody's in severe distress and you don't know what to do, you might panic. And that might also be very difficult for the other person as well that's going through all of that. So luckily we were taught like what the boundaries are, and we were taught to do coaching with those techniques, I think in a far deeper way, because having met coaches from other communities afterwards, I've come to learn and appreciate that there's a depth to the methods that we learn and to the way that we practiced. I think Dante agrees. Do you agree? Pretty much? Okay. But we were also taught to be as responsible as possible, and we were taught that it's a very vulnerable process to accompany someone in their journey, especially if you do it in a deeper way, if of course that's appropriate for the client. It was very important for me not to ruin anyone. I won't break anyone, I promise myself this. People will be fine. Plus, I was kind of concerned. I myself am more comfortable with trauma. I've had my own issues with depression and with anxiety, and so has my mother. I've seen it in my family, and it's part of why I got here at the end of the day, because when you kind of end up being a little bit the therapist of your mom, that does something to you. There's a price you pay for that, but there's also a bit of like an inner expansion that you get. And once you've held space for your mother, you can probably hold space for anybody else. It's never going to be as hard. So I was like worried at the same time that I won't know the difference between coaching and therapy. And what if I get somebody that actually needs therapy and I do coaching with them and I can't properly support? So all of that was going on in my head. It was like my one big fear, not to have a client that would actually need therapy, and I wouldn't know how to handle that or how to bring that up, or I wouldn't know to bring that up. I would just think, oh my gosh, I can help them, I'm good enough. Like I didn't want to be arrogant. So part of this course, we had to find clients to practice on, basically. And Cosmin recommended you for this, and you were actually my first client as part of that program. So the first conversation we have, you show up on Zoom and we start talking, and you're like, I sense you're obviously tensed. I obviously had my own tension, but had learned to appear very relaxed. It's part of my coping mechanism. And you just like told me, first of all, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. I had a coach before, this is everything she did wrong. I don't want to see any of that with you. I've had my life is shit, my past was shit, I don't want to ever hear about it, and so on. And then at the end, you had almost lost your breath, and you said, and also I'm on antidepressants, I'm under psychiatric treatment. And I was like, shit.
Good starting point for you, I guess.
Oh my, this is the moment I've been waiting for, or not. This is the moment I've been dreading. This is... And it was like the one thing that I feared most, would happen. But by that time, I had already really listened to you and connected to you, and I could sense you exactly what you described earlier. So you spit this information out, and then you pulled away from the camera, and you were waiting for me to reject you.
Yeah,
and
true.
You held your breath, and
True,
now you're like, now she's gonna reject me.
Yeah.
And I was not going to do that, of course. but it was a really powerful moment for me as well. So I took a deep breath, and then I told you about my own experience with depression. I told you my mom had severe psychotic episode, and that she was under psychiatric treatment for a while. I congratulated you, I think, for actually doing this, and because it's very brave to first actually get help, and then it's very brave to admit you need help of this sort, and then to actually get it. It's difficult to figure out you need this kind of help, and
true.
Then to admit it, and then to actually get it, and then to actually take the pills, and then to actually own this up and talk to people about that.
I mean, it took me 10 years easily to be able to understand, like, there is something that really needs to be discussed. So, yeah, it's
exactly.
difficult.
So that's what I saw, like, beyond all of everything that was going on with me, that I was able to look at and address and, just see, okay, Calina, you're really uncomfortable right now. Fine. It's everything you thought you didn't want to happen. But then also, once I acknowledged how I'm feeling, I could look at you and I see this really brave, really young, really beautiful person who's gone through so much to come to this point and give me this exact speech, and that was beautiful for me. So I couldn't do anything else than
Thank you for
what I
saying
did, and I was touched. So
thank you for sharing that. I had no idea where you were in your life at that point, but I also feel like in general I have no idea about a lot of things that you're doing. I think I already mentioned this to you, like, I look at you as this person who exists for me, and outside of me you probably just freeze in time. I don't know what you're doing. So I really have almost no understanding. I feel like lately our relationship has changed for sure. So at this point where I'm also closer to feeling much better and healing, and you have also opened a little bit more about your own process. And there have been but there have been some moments when you would say, like, look, Anka, I'm myself in a difficult situation right now. I'm working on something that has taken a lot of energy and resources from me. Do you think this is a moment in your life that, with the tools that we already discussed, maybe you can stay with what you're feeling, maybe you can explore it a little bit? Can we postpone our discussion for like 2 days? And this has taught me multiple things, which is, first of all, you're a human being.
Surprise.
Surprise. And second,
I mean, it's great when I start to learn that. That was what I was going through back then, was me learning or being reminded that I am a human being. I sometimes also forget and push myself too hard, but
yeah, I guess, especially like when you really want to evolve and also help others, we all end at that point, right?
Do it all at once and as quickly as possible, because then I have stuff to do.
But like, you taught me that you're a human being, which was actually important for me to find out, because I did have a tendency where I would be like, this is very difficult for me, I want to write to you, or like I would immediately search for help, which also gets in a slightly non-healthy position. Like, it should be that at some point we realize help is within us. And this has also taught me about boundaries, because I've also been trying myself to be here for friends or other people that would need me in moments when I felt like I have nothing, like no energy left, no time for anything, and where I would really like to prioritize myself, but then there's someone coming like, I don't know, I want you around, I don't know, for Christmas, or for I need to tell you about this thing that happened in my life, which it's great, and I love people, I love spending time with them, but there are moments when I need to just shut down and be able to communicate this to other people, and I find it so difficult. So I feel like, in a sense, your way of communicating to me, I'm also a human being, I need my time sometimes, it's okay if we postpone it with 2 days, nothing will happen, you're still gonna be fine. I feel like, in a sense, this has also taught me a little bit, like, how do I postpone things, how do I create my own boundaries. But the fact that I don't know still much about what you do outside of your sessions with me, puts me in the position of asking the next question, which is, so you're actually trained as a systemic coach, if I'm correct. What is that, and what do you actually do?
It's just a fancy new way of saying, I think it's the word systemic is getting a buzz lately, but what it basically says is that when I look at my clients, whether it's an organizational client, a team, or an individual, I look at them as if they are a system and within the systems that they are part of. So I don't just look at maybe the worst thing we were taught that we shouldn't do is to look at the client and see just their problems. So there's actually a very good coaching book that says, coach the client, not the problem. Because many people, it's like, oh, I figured out everything that's wrong with you. Like my mind would naturally go there as well. Like we are wired to find issues as people. Our brains are wired that way. So already taking a step forward and looking at a person as being a whole person with an issue, with a goal, with a set of resources, with a set of blocks, already means coaching the person. So when I look at a person as if they are a system, I look at exactly that everything that's going on within them, at their voices, the multiple voices in their heads. And, we've done parts work oftentimes where we've actually expressed or projected different parts of you or different voices using an object. Because you kind of start looking at that as people, like you're a full system of emotions, of voices from most likely your parents, spoiler alert, wrestling for your attention in your head, and then multiple goals, conflicting goals, and then you have a light side, which is the one that is shown and that you are aware of and that you connect to people from, and then there's a shadow side that is not what people would say with your flaws. It's just the one you're hiding. It can have a bunch of resources in there as well. So I'm trained to kind of see both sides. I can see what's being seen. I strive to see what's being seen, what's obvious, but also what's not being said, or what is hidden, what is missing from the conversation. What are the parts you don't give attention to or you judge most, and what are those you want to bring out? And then so that's why you yourself are a system. Each of us are a system of each of these things that have dynamics between them. If you remove one or if you shed light on one, then everything rearranges sometimes, and you've probably experienced that. And then you get to see yourself as a whole slowly, like accepting, integrating a bit more of your bits and pieces so that you can feel like you're a whole person. And then beyond that, you are part of systems, of larger systems. You are part of the teams that you work in. You are part of the organizations that you've worked in. And actually, in a sense, you will forever be connected to every system that you were ever part of, whether you like it or not. So every school system, every classroom, every job, every group of friends are all a part of you, and you will forever have been a part of them. So you can leave that system for sure. Where there's a bit of a difference is with your family system. That is your first experience. It's for all of us. It's our first experience of belonging, and it's where we learn the rules of belonging, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, so that we are not rejected. Because rejection at that stage means death. Like there's no way around it. That's what it is.
Is this also to say that belongingness comes a little bit with some rules?
Yeah, unfortunately, most belonging in human systems at this point comes with rules. And since tribal times, and some rules might be healthy and useful and keep us safe from each other, of course, whereas other rules of belonging might actually be unhealthy, and you'll have environments with very unhealthy rules of behavior. And unhealthy means when it's not like a toxic thing, or it's not like a way to judge a system. It's when the system harms itself and then destroys itself with the rules of belonging, or destroys its individual to the point that they can no longer sustain that system. So that's what unhealthy is unsustainable, basically. So you'll see organizations where people are very hard at work. So they're worked hard, they're going into burnout, everything collapses, or teams like that. That is unhealthy, not because one person doesn't like it, but because it's not healthy for the whole. So yeah, in your family, you don't ever get to walk out. You can never leave your family system, even if your parents die, even if you die. That is not, even if you get adopted, you'll join another family system, but your family of origin, you'll still have, everybody has a mother and the father, biological. Otherwise, we don't really come into this world, whether it's artificial insemination, whatever it is. And that is like your first blueprint of what it means to belong. Of course, when you go to school or when you go to work, rules of belonging change. And that's why you're going a bit crazy as well, because you're like, this doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't fit my system.
I had just learned the cheat code and it doesn't work here. So you redefine yourself and you go through all of these stages of figuring out what's right for you. But in a sense, what this work has taught me is that even in organizations, even as individuals, we all seek to somehow recreate the original system that we were part of and try to make it better for ourselves.
Rules are clear and the roles are also clear, like who is who in my life.
Yeah, then you can actually look at your boyfriend and actually see your boyfriend.
Yeah.
And then go, oh, I didn't see you before. You're kind of handsome.
I thought you were my father.
Yeah, hello, stranger. Exactly. So that's kind of like how it works in terms of coaching. And it's more interesting, I think, in organizations. Like everybody that joins an organization, they come with their own blueprint that's formed, their blueprint of belonging that's formed in their family systems. And then everybody actually recreates their own family dynamic.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a mess. Of course, there's different aspects to an organization. Unlike a family, an organization has to have a purpose or a goal. Otherwise, there's no reason for it to exist.
Yeah.
And there's obviously other elements that are part of this system. But at the end of the day, it's like this continuous projection of family systems. And you can so often find founders or CEOs or team leaders that just recreate their family dynamic within their teams. And it's good up until a point, because you feel like, oh, and you have the saying in organizations, we're just like family here. That is a huge red flag.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That is, it means like usually what you would say is, I've created a better family for myself here. I'm hoping I won't get hurt the same way. But if I do, it's still better than being hurt in a new way. So, yeah.
Which reminds me in a sense, or at least parts of what you just said remind me in a sense of one thing you told me about 2 years ago that I really, really disliked when you said it, which is we all go back to what's familiar to us, no matter how painful or dark that is. And I'm not gonna lie, on that spot I was like, are you crazy? Why would I go back to a place where like I really got super hurt and that I don't want to be there, right? And it took me probably half a year at that point. I feel like I can recall the moment when I wrote to you like, oh, you know what?
I think you're right.
I think I really understood now at the end.
Yeah. Because it's so much you don't need to do that anymore if you're actually able to look back at what actually happened and going back to why sometimes it's important to let the past resurface. Because when you do that, you can mourn and then you can let go.
And if you'd like to learn more about fine art and mental health, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell.
Otherwise, you unconsciously, obviously everything you look away from, it's not that it doesn't go, there's no trash day. Nobody comes to remove that trash. It just piles up in your own house.
Which gets me back to the point of why it was difficult for me in terms of 2 stages. Like, first and foremost, how do I accept that I need help and I go talk to someone? And the second stage, I think, is something pretty recent, which is that boundary, basically, that you need to cross right before the healing. And that's where you stay the most with your feelings. That's where you get to cry for the child that you wish, in a sense, that you were, for the things that you
Didn't
you know,
have.
like, you feel like a little bit of pity in a sense.
Yeah, you should. It's compassion. Yeah.
But yeah, like that's the point. Like when you kind of reimagine it as, yeah, it's pity, and in a sense that's sad, but this is because I'm now compassionate with myself, and I understand that some things have been wrong and some things I didn't deserve, and so on and so forth. I feel like for me, staying with these thoughts and going through this process has been extremely difficult, and I had multiple moments when I was like, I just want to give up and go back to I don't care about my past, you know?
Yeah. So much easier back then. Yeah. Not really, because you kept going into the same dynamics and they were draining as hell, but for a second it feels like you at least had a Saturday off.
Yes, exactly. And it's like so draining when, you know, like you're trying to maintain a normal life and have a full-time job and everything, and you're like constantly going through this process and being like, I don't even have the real physical time to cry as much as I wish I did, you know? So yeah,
and I mean, not to scare people, like you're very advanced as not only as a person who's worked on their personal development. Not only are you very advanced in your practices, and we've worked together for a very long time, on and off, of course, because unlike in a therapy process, coaching is like more goal oriented, or sometimes we work on a needs basis as well, but we haven't worked like daily or weekly or monthly for the past 4 years. That would have been inappropriate. But and at the same time, it's not all coaching, I guess, that is like this. Like oftentimes it would be more like when you and I first started, you have a goal, you have a session, you know, you find what you truly want, you set an intention, you find what might be in the way, and then you figure out what your resources are, and maybe you reframe. I'd ask you some questions to help you to look differently at the things that you are dealing with, so that you can get some new fresh perspective. And then we'd sometimes involve the body as well to get wisdom from other parts of your, except from your mind, because the mind has been telling you the same stories over and over again. And it's much more, I think, incremental, like some of the changes that you can see. You work a bit more in the present, you reach your goals, you move on, and so on. But you've come to a point where you've wanted more, like you're doing better, you have reached all your goals, and there's this combination of you being very brave, but also having been, I think I wanted to say having been very hurt in the past, but I do think that all of us, I read that somewhere recently, all of us severely underestimate the amount of pain and suffering we actually have deep down inside that we've found ways to kind of like hide. You're underestimating it less than most people. And I feel like it's a very advanced practice, one that I have shared with you, that I'm doing myself as well, and that you're doing right now, which is staying in the moment, staying in the present, allowing things to rise up, and giving yourself time and space to see them and to let them go, so that they don't have such a strong hold on you. So that's a combination of coaching techniques with meditation, with mindfulness, with a bunch of, things. It's not necessarily pure coaching. Not everybody goes through coaching. Like some people just have like a really fun hour and then they go get some stuff done, they get some motivation, they get energized, and then they reach their goals and carry right along.
And then I just go out of the coaching session being like, I'm gonna cry for 2 hours.
They're like, am I paying you for this? What the hell? Why am I paying you for this? I could do this myself. Yeah. But we have had, like, throughout our 4 years, I feel like we've had different stages where it was more about professional life, or it was more about personal life, and it kind of like was a build up to this place where you're like, everything has changed, you've reached all of your goals. Like, I remember that first vision board you made, by the way, which was gorgeous, and everything on that board you made happen in like 6 months. And it was like a very ambitious vision board. It was like, you were living in Romania, you hadn't finished architecture school, and then you were like, I want to live in Switzerland, I want to have exactly this dog. There's a picture of Vanda on that, a Vanda-like creature, on that vision board, and then all of that and some other, and then it's like in 6 months you were working for that company, you moved in Switzerland, you were doing it, and then you had Vanda. It was like absolutely stunning how much you were able to do. And then you've done all that, and you continuously set goals and achieve exactly what you want to achieve. You continuously make all of that happen. And then you've gotten to a point where you were like, then why am I still miserable? Like, what the hell? It might not be the things. So this is when we actually were able to say, okay.
Yeah, I mean...
let's look at that. Yeah.
I feel like, so basically... I feel like it did, a lot of the changes and a lot of the achievements have for sure helped, but they helped in terms of, I found a little bit of rhythm and context where I can actually feel the freedom to get into my real problems. Yeah. Basically, I feel like it was up until then.
Yeah.
It was up until when I had all of these things and I slowly started applying for my dog. That I wrote to you being like, yeah, now I'm ready. We should start discussing about my childhood and everything else. And to this point, honestly, there are things that I never had a chance or never had time or the mood at that point to discuss with you. But I feel like this is precisely where it should be. Like, I really understand now that you are for sure not here to hear all of my stories. Like, you've been teaching me so much about the tools and everything that I need and how much to connect with my body and how to allow the feelings, how to allow the memories to come, that at this point where something appears, I know I won't run to my phone being like, Calina, help me.
It's happening again.
Like, at this point, I would probably go for a walk in the forest and just deconnect, just like go offline for a while and be like, okay, what's in my mind? Why am I thinking this? And even stopping to ask why. Because basically the body would feel it first, right? Yeah. And we always go in this direction of why, the question of why do I feel like this, and then you go in like, oh, I have all of these reasons to feel like this, and you start even inventing reasons where there are not
reasons. You overreact on things. You retell a story that happened yesterday to make your boss sound more menacing than they actually were, just so that the person before you understands and validates your feelings.
True.
We do minor tweaks.
While if you accept,
yeah.
Versus it's like, oh, I accept that now I'm sad, and you don't go spiraling or searching for like, why am I sad? It's more like, okay, I'm sad. How do I feel? And a lot of the techniques that you've been teaching me about is like, how does my breath change? Like, now that I'm sad, how does this sadness feel like? What other feeling I know feels like it? And this has actually helped me a lot to kind of remap feelings. Like, one example that I can give is that I managed at some point throughout the process to remap feeling insecure with feeling proud, because for whatever reason in my body it feels very similarly. Like my shoulders would like clench a little bit, and then maybe my heart would beat a little bit faster. And yeah, it's basically like that's giving you a power in a sense to control who you want to be, in a sense. I don't know if this is like the best way to put it, but basically it's like, yeah, look, I do feel insecure. I could go spiral down about reasons why I feel insecure, but let's just kind of normalize it. All people feel insecure at some point in their lives, and how can I reconnect this insecureness to something that in my body feels the same? And then I also have reasons. If I want to go into finding reasons, I have the reasons also to be proud, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's an amazing way to do this, because it kind of teaches you two things. First and foremost, that you can actually change your experience based on how you can have your mind change the experience that your body's having, or the quality of it. It doesn't actually change, but you figure out that it's all in the label. So if you change the label, it's suddenly better. And the second thing that this does is that it also teaches you that the mind doesn't know shit. Like, in a way, there's that part of you that labels. Change the label, it just changes everything. It does, like, maybe it should not be my primary source of wisdom. maybe that's not where I should check how I'm doing. Maybe, and for me this was a process that is still ongoing, to kind of learn to change, and with kind of the systemic work that I've been doing, the body and the intuition is a little bit more involved, and I've been kind of learning to change the roles. Like, I still respect the mind. So one of the things that I found really interesting in working with you, like both personally and professionally, was the fact that you are an artist, and you brought that. I feel like you've brought that from day one, like from our first interaction, for sure, you brought that, and then it kind of came through as a way for you to express yourself that kind of found its place in our sessions and in your process as well. And that to me was also beautiful. Part of it was because I was always fascinated by artists, especially visual artists, like people who can draw. And yeah, I wanted to ask you this: how has art blended with your journey?
So yeah, that's actually a good question.
You seem surprised.
I do believe that I find it easier to express myself visually, and it gives me courage. So basically, how I was saying before, that I would first draw an entire series about my journey with depression before I would be able to talk about it. I think that's an example of gaining courage and more acceptance. And I feel like the moment I start drawing, it does multiple things to me. Like, in a sense, it's a little bit like meditation. It's just like, at that point, it doesn't matter anything around me. It's just me hatching or, like trying to construct an object. And it first of all makes me enter this world of nothing else matters, kind of like the exercising that we were doing through meditation with breathing. Like, your breath is the most important thing right now. For me, the moment I draw, it's like how my hand works with this pencil or ink, whatever, right now is the most important thing in the world. And I also feel like this has taught me a lot about nature or other things that you get to love in what's surrounding you. Like, just studying a little bit of anatomy for my drawings, or understanding textures for my drawings. Or I've also experienced drawing with colors, like that would be a good example, but also digital painting. And I feel like in everything that I wanted to draw, I learned a little bit more about the world that surrounds us. And coming from a depression point of view, that's really, really game-changing in terms of when you experience hard depression, at some point you might think about suicide, and I've had it in my mind for multiple years in a row. And when you realize that you can find beauty in the smallest things around you, I would have moments when I would see, I don't know, a small butterfly, and I would be like, oh my god, this made my day, like, this is the most beautiful thing. And then when you also find yourself able to put it down on paper, how you felt when you saw that butterfly, or how that butterfly looked like, simply, I feel like this really makes you connect with nature or people or
life.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough with meeting more and more artists, especially now that I'm making Artful Minds. I feel like this really got me in touch with more and more people who are like me, which also goes into direction of like opening my mind in terms of how many people struggle with mental health. And obviously, I'm not happy for anyone who's going through a difficult and hard time, but I really appreciate how much people gain from this in terms of wanting to be there for you, in terms of being able to be vulnerable and sharing their experiences. And yeah, ever since I made Artful Minds, I had the opportunity to go out for coffees with other artists with very similar stories like mine. And either was it depression or something else, just like a dark place in their life. And they would be able to talk to me about it in a very open and vulnerable way, and I would do the same. And it's like you're, for your first time face to face with a stranger, and you tell each other things that are so deep you start literally crying, and then like start telling each other how art kind of saved you from this dark place. And I've heard people saying that they like drawing things that they dream. I don't really dream at all, so I would say that for me was never a real influence, but I always found it interesting. It's like an introspection into something that's difficult to express for me, as it was difficult to express what I've been going through, and how it has felt for me. And it's like, it's not only in the past, right? It's not only before I even got to talk to you about my depression, but even now, how do you just simply express into words depression, right? It's just so difficult, and I felt like at some point it made so much impact in my life. I was like, this is in a sense part of who I am. And even with you, I had discussions in which you were saying like, this is in a sense your superpower. And for me it's like, okay, how do I transform something so dark in a superpower? And kind of art did that, you know, like I'm not able to talk about it too much. I don't really have the words. I don't really know how do you express something that's so deep and so personal, but I know how to make a visual, and then I see other people looking at it and being like, damn, I felt the same. And that does so much to me. That's like absolutely great.
Yeah, I think that's so special, because I've seen, like, from where I'm standing, I've seen that thing that you described. You sent me a short video of you sketching something that there were just many lines that you had to draw at a certain space apart. And I could see, I think that's when I had my first idea that we could actually go into mindfulness a bit more and use some of those techniques, because obviously you're already doing that so much in your art. It's like just a very mindful way to experience art. Like you say, you focus on this one thing, so everything else kind of falls into the background in a way. And there's this saying that every artist actually truly just wants to be understood. So that's why they create what they create, whether it's something visual or using words or dances or performative arts or whatever. It's just a craving to be able to transmit or to share, to mirror with someone, right? To connect with someone and to know that somebody else feels the exact same thing or understands like the intricacies of what you really feel. Which is a far more detailed picture than saying sad.
Yeah. In a sense, it has so much to do with human connection, yes. It's like, I told you, for me to see other people reacting to my work, or just other people writing to me like, hey Anka, you know, I heard about you and Artful Minds, do you want to go for a coffee? I'm also an artist. This does so much. Like, this is where I'm like, it's not about selling art, it's not about monetizing everything. At this point, it's just like, I want to be creative and express something, and I want to see people like, yeah, I want to talk to you, again, vulnerably and honestly about my own experiences. And you learn so much from other people's stories. It's really open-minded. Like, it really helps you to have a more open-minded perspective.
Yeah, and I think there's something when you share your art, right? When you share it with the world, like you've started doing that through Artful Minds and through your work, to actually put yourself out there, which I know, not from experience, but I can imagine it's a very difficult thing to do as an artist, to actually put yourself out there and show people what you've been doing. It's probably difficult, but at the same time, I think it can bring so much to people, whether they do reach out to you or not, because of exactly what you said. Like, you can look at something that you've created out of a very specific set of feelings, out of your own internal system, right? Which is mapped in a very intricate and specific way, your specific set of sensations. And you've put all of that into a visual thing, and that's going to spark something in the other person. We'll never know if it's the same thing, we can only hope. Yeah. But it sparks something in them, and they feel like, oh my god, I look at this and I absolutely get it. They may get something entirely different. It doesn't matter. What matters is that they were touched in a way, that a part of them was sparked because they looked at this, that they felt understood. You painted this so that people understand how you feel, and in turn, when somebody looks at it, they feel understood. And I think that's magical. That's a form of communication that definitely goes beyond the very, very imperfect words that we have to describe things.
Yeah, another thing that I would like to say is how art has made me feel like I can add curiosity throughout my entire life. And a point that I was making was, when I draw something and I want to learn from nature, I'm just nowadays curious by looking at how the wood looks like on a tree. It's like you get curious about the smallest details out there, and in a sense I've learned throughout time to use this as a superpower also in my daily life, like challenges at work. I need to manage up, and it's tough for me. How do I see it in a more positive way than negative? And I feel like curiosity has really, really done something for me. And this goes me to the point of, how do you feel about curiosity?
I do think it's like the underpinning for any sort of personal development work. And I think curiosity has the quality to it of being neutral, in the sense that it's not per se positive or negative in itself. You're not expecting something positive or negative to happen. You're saying there is equanimity in curiosity. It's a feeling that basically tells you, I am interested in what's about to happen, regardless of whether it's positive or negative. I'm not interested, because otherwise, if you would be expecting something, you'd be in either hope or anxiety.
Yeah, you may get
right?
disappointed.
But you're like, I'm either hopeful I'm going to see something, or I'm anxious something bad is going to happen. When you're curious, whatever comes up is good, because you were curious and now you know. You wanted to know and now you know. So
and
whatever,
it's
positive in itself.
came.
It's easier to accept. What comes to you is easier to accept, because you're having that curious artist or curious anthropologist or curious scientist kind of mind that says, I want to understand the intricate details of this. You're looking at a tree not to say this tree is good enough to draw and this tree is not good enough to draw. You're looking at a tree because you're actually curious about the intricacies of that branch.
Yeah.
And when you look at yourself in the same way, then all of that, is this good, is this bad, what does it mean, kind of like falls away, and the beauty of your person and your internal system kind of can rise up and get revealed, and then you can have acceptance, and then maybe if you're lucky, a little bit of self-compassion and a little bit more self-love throughout all of that.
And I feel like in a sense it takes you as far as to your opinion also about other people. Like you stop saying, oh my god, I hate this person for doing this to me, and you kind of reframe as in the direction of like, oh, interesting, this person did that affect me like this, what can I do with this challenge, basically. Like you get curious about everything and stop taking things so personally.
Yeah. Or even what must have happened to them for them to do something like this. What might be going on inside themselves, not to dwell on it too much, but just like, wow, he does this. Instead of asking yourself, what does this say about me? You can curiously ask yourself, what does this say about them? Like, what's going on in there?
And like nowadays there's so much hate on the internet, and I feel like people really need to, like be a little bit more compassionate about how much did this person work to even get famous, it's so easy to get famous and have thousands of people hate you. And like, okay, there is that phrase of, if you don't have haters, it means you're doing something wrong.
I guess it's a way to make the best of a bad situation.
It's a bit like that, right? But like, it's true, like the higher you get, the more people will hate on you. And I feel like a lot of times people get really, really affected by, why do I get so much hate? And if they just reframe to, oh, interesting, I get so much hate, it means that maybe these other people have problems, and then you can ask yourself, like, how can I help these problems? Or like, how can I help these people? And I feel like this really can reframe a little bit the game. But yeah, it's difficult when it's too many people involved, for sure.
Yeah, maybe you just don't need to help them. It's too many. It's fine. They can help themselves. They each have their lives, their own coping mechanisms, their own way to handle things. But just by treating the whole situation with curiosity, I think there's a bunch of questions you can ask yourself about them, about you, about different dynamics, about the, hidden gift in any situation, about the hidden price you have to pay in every situation, and so on. Just like curiously looking at this, you find more about nature, about life, about art. And it's just, you don't always need to find things out. Like, we're wired to learn things so we can survive, so we can protect ourselves, so we can... Sometimes, like, if you look around and you're like, I'm well fed in this century, there's things in my fridge. Maybe I'm not the richest person, but the likelihood of me actually starving is really, really low.
Yeah, there's a ceiling above my head.
Ceiling above my head, and I look around, there's no predators charging at me right at this very moment. In fact, our beautiful race has worked and struggled really hard to remove
Dante.
us. Dante
would like to jump on you.
Well, he's not out of the food chain. We are. Yeah, so he doesn't get the luxury of being out of the food chain, but us humans do. So at the end of the day, you can actually be curious for the sake of curiosity, and not just to learn how to protect yourself or to learn what might hurt you or where to get food and so on. You can actually just be curious for the sake of understanding more and expanding yourself and your awareness and everybody else. And you don't need to do something with it. You don't need to change anything. You don't need to help people. You can just know. That's okay.
I feel like I would slowly say that we are arriving at the end of the podcast, because that was covering all the questions that I had prepared. Is there anything else that you would like to add or ask?
Yeah, I'd ask you if you can look back to some of the time before you and I met. Like, it was a really difficult time for you, I know. And you were going through quite a lot, and so much has happened since. And it was just like a privilege and an honor and truly humbling and also growth experience for me to watch you go through all of this. So seeing you now, I'm like also next to you. I feel like I'm seeing that other Anka as well, that had yet to go through everything you have, and was really struggling at the time, and was not very kind to herself, and did not dream of putting herself out there the way you're doing it right now. And I see her. I cannot not see her, because she's part of you.
It's part of me, yeah.
And whatever she decided to do then is what made all of this possible. So you owe this to her too. So yeah, I'm wondering if you can remember her, what would you say to her right now?
So yeah, for sure I can remember her, because again, I'm kind of carrying her a lot. I would say that I didn't change so much. I feel like in a sense it was just the same me needing more direction. And I didn't really understand what... Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, basically, I didn't really understand what direction or help would look like. I didn't fully understand what I was going through. I just felt like a continuous, I don't belong here. Yeah. I didn't even have like real boundaries of how do I want people to treat me, how do I need people to love me. I didn't understand like anything. I felt like I need protection. I felt like basically I needed a lot of things that I found them difficult to have as a kid. Mm-hmm. Basically in the most important years in your life, when you really require someone to understand you and protect you, I felt like I was still searching for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, coaching and therapies has a lot of ways to have taught me a little bit that I don't need to wait for a person to come and help me, even though you've been helping me a lot. Right. But it's like you've been helping me in a sense to find out that I have these tools internally. It's not like you came and solved my life and found myself a job, you know. Like, you basically told me these are all internal tools that you have. You just need to be aware of them and use them in your own benefit. And yeah, if I were to say something to the person that I was before, I think that would be, I'm still with you.
I'm still with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's kind of it.